So, dear friends, we would like to start with an experiment, a physics experiment that is one of the great mysteries of quantum mechanics and still has not found satisfactory explanation by current physics. It was first performed in the 1800s with light waves, a beam of light shone through two parallel slits, as you can see in the top right picture on your screen. And what was observed on the screen was the expected interference pattern. And this is explained as the nature of light as wave, because we know waves do form interference patterns. We know this from physics. This experiment has been repeated afterwards and many times with beams of quantum particles. For example, with photons, and we know photons are the light quantum waves, but also with electrons and other quantum particles, such as neutrons or even atoms, and even with small molecules. And we observe the same interference pattern as with the light waves, leading physicists to believe that indeed quantum particles do behave as waves. And very counterintuitively, even if just one electron or photon at a time is sent through the slits, we would expect them in this case to behave as particles, so going through either one or the other slit. Amazingly, we still find the same interference pattern. Thus, it seems that quantum particles do behave like waves, even individually. However, now if we do observe these particles, so with a measurement instrument, if we observe them, so detect which of the slits they do go through, then the interference pattern disappears. We don't get that. So you can see this in the bottom left image on your screen. So just what we would expect normally from a particle, a classical physics particle going through either one slit or the other will give us those two lines on the projecting screen. Now, we still don't understand why this is, and this experiment has been repeated many times since with different instruments, different measuring instruments, different quantum particles, different places of observation even, and the same thing happens. We do not have the interference pattern if the particles have been observed, which is, of course, very mysterious. We don't yet understand why this happens. We wanted, though, to use this experiment not for us to find an explanation, of course, but we wanted to bring through the fact that this awareness changes reality. So to bring to the forefront of our consciousness the role of our awareness, the role that our awareness can play. We can say, where attention goes, energy flows. We are here to experience, but also to observe ourselves in these experiences that we go through, to be aware, to be present. And this may point us towards something else. And we have represented in the right side bottom corner, this something else as the rose of the heart, about which this whole meeting is meant to be. Once we become aware of our situation, of this world, of where we are, we start maybe questioning, we start observing ourselves within the whirlwind of life. And so many relevant questions may then come forth, such as, who are we? Where are we coming from? Why are we here? And the right questions will then bring the right experiences and maybe an opening up to receiving answers. And to quote Jiddu Krishnamurti, our job is not to pursue the unknowable, but to understand the confusion, the turmoil, the misery in ourselves. And then the truth can come to us. The truth is always there, and it can touch us, come to us, when we become empty, empty of expectations, empty and silent.
Wanted to take a bit of a step back first, looking at why we seek in the first place. Just as we saw the experiment where scientists, quantum physicists, search for the reality, for the fundamentals of reality that govern not only the minute but also our own life. So we could say that all human beings are seekers. In fact, we are here because we are seeking for something. Perhaps we cannot really put a name on it. Perhaps it's not quite clear. Or perhaps we know exactly what we want. So why do we seek, and what do we seek? If we look at history, perhaps we can see that since the moment that the human being became self-aware, so his consciousness raised up from the animal consciousness, we started to question how he could survive, how he could find better solutions in his strife for survival. But we do that nowadays as well. As soon as we come out of childhood, we start looking for solutions. We don't really have clear the questions, perhaps, and maybe we see these in our teenage or our children, who are going through teenage. We see that there is this stirring within. We become rebels, perhaps, so we withdraw from maybe the social attitude that we had when we were little children. We can see that things become ever so slightly harder and harder. Our emotions become more tumultuous, our thoughts becomes a bit more confused, and we try to find solutions to our life. We look, first of all, outside of ourselves. We look at our family members. We look at perhaps the politics. We look maybe into different solutions. Could be religion for some, be occultism, if you're so disposed. All of us, long and seek for something. We try different groups, perhaps. We're trying to integrate ourselves. We look for our identity out there. And it's a bit, we could say, as there were 10,000 paths. 10,000 paths on the way to the mountain. Now, perhaps we can feel lost in these paths. And, the 10,000 paths is a reference to Lao Tzu, who lived thousands of years ago in China. Today, we would say maybe that there are 8 billion paths. We all come from a different background. We all come from different lives, different ideas of what we want, what we need. However, fundamentally, we are one humanity. We could perhaps look at 3 different types of human beings. The ones that research the truth, right? They seek to understand life. And then we see a different type that are more inclining to action. We see activism, especially now in the younger generations, but it's always been like that. We see that we need to act. We feel the need to change things. And then there is a third type, the type that perhaps responds with emotions and feelings. We could classify this as a religious type. However, all these 3 ways of seeking eventually have to come to the one path that takes us to the top of the mountain. And the reality is that even as we grow up, it's not so easy to find the one path. And today, speaking of the heart as the spiritual gateway, we want to present the idea that it's in the heart that we can find this one path. It's beyond the 3 different types of human being, whatever our personal inclination. It's in this different type of energy, different force that comes into our life at a certain moment. The moment that we perhaps have exhausted all possibilities out there, and we put our hands up and say, well, I don't know what else to do. At that moment, we have enough space in ourselves, enough silence to hear another voice, that of the rose of the heart, which we call the spirit spark atom. Then a different seeking, different possibility opens up in our life. And maybe we can reflect on, at this point, on how do we communicate with this new principle in us. This new principle, which is totally different from what we experienced before.
If you, from inner distress, reach for external knowledge and bow to outer authority, you will experience even bigger problems, because every external authority means stronger ties. So your thirst for liberation, for liberating freedom, can only be quenched at the source of living water, in which you must submerge within your own being. If you truly seek for this living water, you will have to walk the path of self-authority.
we're really looking at people who, for one reason or another, start to feel that this world, which is depicted in this picture as within the sphere with the stars all painted on it, has got something missing. Something seems to be missing here, or maybe it's us. Maybe we are a bit deficient in some way. So we start seeking first outwardly, and we find things. Some useful books, maybe. Some useful experiences. Some of them aren't pleasant, some are unpleasant. Doesn't matter, we learn. And then one day, perhaps, with all our seeking out there, we become a little bit tired, confused, and we fall back on just being. And in that rest, that space, our existential being will become acquainted with the basic reality that is existence. And every living being experiences that one way or another, either mundanely or profoundly. I should say maybe simply rather than mundanely. We have to admit that we know very little. I know our science and technology has advanced tremendously, etc. But you know, if there's such a lot to know, an infinite amount, in fact, anything divided by infinity is zero. So we've got to say we know nothing then. And but at the same time, we start turning inwardly rather than outwardly. We feel that perhaps there we will find the truth, something that is nearer than hands and feet, that's been waiting quietly there for us, maybe whispers occasionally. And so when we start opening ourselves, when we turn around, so to speak, and following an inward path, we have to tread this path in our own authority, because everyone's path is different. Everyone's consciousness is different. And as we say, consciousness, state of consciousness, is state of life. So one person will perceive something in a certain fashion and interpret it in a certain fashion, and another will perceive the same thing, maybe that wonderful experiment that Cora described for us, the double slit experiment, and interpret it in a completely different way. Now, this is the nature of this world, the multiplicity. And eventually we want to turn inward and find the simplicity that's there, the truth. Perhaps even, and by self-initiation, we might be able to experience something of the unity with the source, with the one, the creator, the one and only, the all in all, the light of lights, it's called. And a spiritual school can help you to take that inward direction and be a support in that great adventure of finding the truth within yourself.
The hidden power, O mystery, inviolate eternally. O clear and tranquil fountain, true life's source. In deepest essence are we truly one with you. For from the one, the multitude flows forth.
communication is everything, and everything is communication. So we have a staggering amount of information that's available to us through electronic means, internet, and also that will be consolidated by artificial intelligence soon enough, probably. This amounts to billions of documents and drowning information, while we're starved of the knowledge we need to orientate ourselves to what is becoming rapidly changing conditions in life. And some feel there's a growing sense of crisis. So it's important to know what facts do you know and what do you know how to do. So it's a question of application. It's not things for our heads that are going to help us with that, but what we propose in the Golden Rose Cross is that positively collaborating with an inner awakening and our surroundings would give us that sense of orientation. So signs and symbols form a vital part of our human communication. And in any earthly sense, we travel more effectively when we can refer to universally understood signage. And, you know, that's commonly understood, shared opportunity to make things smoother. Equally, on any spiritual path, we need to know what to look out for if we're going to reach the destination of the path. So as a form of communication, it's vital for us to positively engage with the deeper meanings of signs and symbols. So through what does the International School of the Golden Rosary Cross communicate as its proposed spiritual path to those who are interested to hear intently? So this chosen symbol directs our attention to a process capable of guiding those who are prepared to persevere in that challenge, for taking leave of the limitations we experience of our consciousness to come to a deeper sense of the meaning of life while bound to matter and the five senses. Now, this endeavor is especially possible in our current times when mankind is indeed experiencing this deepening of the consciousness. Our world and its population have been continuing in its cyclical cosmic journey, so that our human consciousness is being taken out of the influences of Pisces with its dogma and faith in conforming with authority, and we're experiencing a crossover into Aquarius, where man is being offered yet another possibility of awakening and developing the higher potential, the autonomous consciousness, collaborating with what stirs, as we experience in the school, in the heart center, or the spirit spark of eternity. So we've entered once again when a time, an era, when access to the universal teachings of all time are being made available, adjusted as they are to the current disposition of the human personality. So spiritual seekers today can therefore connect with this higher light energy of the living Gnosis. This is the proposed path of the liberation that the Golden Rosary Cross suggests when we turn away from the fruitlessness or the ever-turning wheel of life and death, as we all well know it, and it acts as a beacon of renewal, this Golden Rosary Cross symbol, when lived and understood from within. It contains the guidance and instruction for each of the distinct qualities and principles of the symbol. So while still continuing our journey through life, as we all do, with a continued commitment to understanding these elements of the symbol, we experience a sustained peace of the heart, of the opening of the doorway to the Gnosis of truth and love. The symbol propounds 4 elements to be reckoned with by our inherited natural soul quality, as it supports our mortal personality through the necessary changes in consciousness. Like any signage, then, the symbol wants to instill in us the inner deeds, those which are necessary to gain access to the divine through the doorway of the heart. This is the guidance for self-initiation, which can be at our constant disposal during the required unfolding of this process for the renewing of the spirit soul. So when we think about God, how do we build up an image for that? In the 12th century book called the 24 Philosophers, a description of God was given as follows: God, an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. What are the parts of the symbol? We have the circle or sphere as symbolizing the universal, the spiritual, the eternal. The triangle can allow a reconnection with this through an inner awakening of renewing activity, where in the thinking, the desiring, and the willing. This process of reconstruction for the liberation from matter, while still being bound to the 4 square of natural elements. The re-energizing process is constantly radiating from within that center point. And in the middle of the symbol, and it symbolizes the entry of the spirit at the place of the heart. This aligns with the mathematical center of the spiritual vehicle for renewal, that is, the microcosm, also known as the Minitus Mundi, the small world. This is also the vehicle for the incarnating personality into mortal life. When we react positively to spiritual impulses coming from this last seed of eternity, this starts the restoration for the spirit soul through demonstrating our continuous commitment, in amongst all the other things we do in life, to the renewing activity of the spirit spark. We seek unity, love, and the freedom of the all-encompassing knowledge of Gnosis. So although initially being a consciousness of I centrality, dominated as it is by the ego mind, this should stand back to allow these new forces in our inner life to have a liberating impact. The four corners of the square of the mortal personality must become in harmonious alignment with the renewal of all the other elements that comprise consciousness. The mortal body, with its subtle bodies of etheric, astral, and mental body, must move beyond the domination of the ego mind and our five senses. These forces are becoming more and more readily available at the crossover between the eras of Pisces and Aquarius. And they're being experienced by us as humans, consciously or unconsciously, willingly or reluctantly. The spiritual plan for humanity provides the power of action that enables us to place our feet upon the divine path of return in an upward spiral to true freedom. So, indicating the timelessness of this search for God, we conclude with part of a poem from Meister Eckhart from the 13th century, proposing how we might address the seeking and communicating with God. Ours is not the work of seeking you here or there, where we think you might be, but of opening the heart's door. And when we do this, you cannot resist coming in, since our opening and your entering are one.